It gives me great pleasure now to move into the cover crop conversation a little bit more because regenerative agriculture is so dependent on the asset that this brings to the table. We have two local people that are involved, particularly in seed and cover crops, that are going to make a presentation to us basically on the selection for different row cropping systems and hedgerow systems, which we are finding important in our regenerative system. With that, I'd like to introduce Brian Lohse and also Douglas Jon-Iten, please. We have one. Do you want the other microphone too? Do you want the other microphone?
No, one's good. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. It's a pleasure to see everyone. Lockwood Seed is part of the A.L. Gilbert family, and we, for our family to yours, we'd like to say thank you. Been in California for a long time. Again, I'm Brian Lohse. I've got some slides to show you along the way, but before I do, I'd like to introduce Doug. Doug has come to Lockwood this last couple of months. He has a tremendous knowledge with native plants, tremendous knowledge of quite a few of the government programs that are available to help growers get their cover crops established. And he's very knowledgeable when it comes to some of the different relations that those things can go to make an overall benefit to your soil health and in getting things established for long-term projects. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Doug and have him show you some of the things that he's been working on.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Jon-Iten. So just the reason I'm here, I got volunteered. Thanks, Brian. But yeah, I'm glad to be here, and hopefully I can kind of educate some of us on just how the overlap of regenerative practices, right, can apply to working farms. So yeah, thanks for coming out. So this slide, pretty common. It's just kind of talking about some of the benefits of specialty crops, seed crops, either cover crops or other seed mixes. You know, the obvious benefits: soil health, water retention, erosion is a big thing in at least some of the orchard settings. Pollinator support. I mean, that's a big one that's coming down the line. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Some of these cover crops produce great wildlife habitat and even forage. So first, I wanted to kind of talk about just some of the big landscape changes happening, either on a federal, state level that are directly impacting California farms. There's big initiatives like the 30 by 30 to convert up to 30% of California landscape into some type of habitat, so that there's some big dollars going in there. Sigma, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's a big program trying to tackle the big water issues we got, especially down southern counties. Government agencies, they're pumping a lot of dollars into the pollinator habitat, some of that to offset, like, you know, some of the endangered species that are being listed. There's been a huge investment in some of the big corporations to try to adopt some of these sustainability practices, and some of that's now trickling down to the farm level. So some of the farmers are starting to recognize either it's a prerequisite, or, you know, there's some actually incentives that are coming down the line. And then, yeah, the government push to support some of the climate farming practices that'll help during some of these difficult times. So, let's see. So I mentioned Sigma. If you're not familiar with that program, it's a state initiative, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. It's really meant to tackle some of the water imbalances that are happening in the farm settings, again, especially South counties. I have a couple slides that'll kind of highlight the overdrafted basins, some of the counties that are impacted. The MLRP program is a very interesting program. I believe that's funded by the DWR. It's kind of like a block grant format, but really it's trying to prove concept. They fund groundwater sustainability programs. There's 8 different grants that were accepted. They're being funneled through GSAs, so there is basically the water agencies had to form a sustainability plans to try to balance out their water usage. It's a difficult challenge, but this is a creative program that's got a lot of traction, and if it works, I think it's something that would be adopted in a bigger way. there's real dollars. I mean, there's $90 million already appropriated, so those are going to those 8 block grants, but I think there's room for growth as those prove concept. So this is a map from Sigma. It's kind of highlighting the groundwater basins that are most impacted by Sigma. You can see the stuff in the orange. Those are kind of medium, right, where they're having to come to a balance, but it's the red areas in red that are primary focus. Those are the overdrafted basins, and they're being tapered off their groundwater pumping, and there's some interesting challenges they're going to have. There's going to have to be some big changes in what they farm, how they farm, and whether they can farm. Some of the options is to pull it out of farming completely, which would be pretty bad. Conversion to more drought-tolerant crops, which makes a lot of sense. There's going to be a lot of that ground will be converted into solar fields on a big way. Groundwater recharge projects, which I think have a lot of utility, which you can incorporate habitat onto. This is a great chart here that kind of highlights the areas impacted. It's on a county level and also by crops. So this was an estimate of crops that will probably be directly impacted by Sigma as they get rained off their groundwater pumping. I think it's just important to note, like, some of these are acre totals, so these are some big numbers. If you go down to the bottom, some people project up to 1 million acres that will be farmed differently than they are now, if not pulled out completely. And yeah, it's going to impact some of our core crops here in California. So I mentioned the solar stuff. There's obviously lots of opportunity in those arid regions to convert into solar. There's a lot of investment going into. There's also an opportunity to incorporate beneficial habitat, whether it's cover crops, perennial grass, some of the pollinator stuff, and even some of the native stuff, which I think has a lot of application. This slide here, that's my son there walking through a yarrow field, but this just highlights some of the benefits of pollinator habitats. Again, most of this is pretty common knowledge, but increased pollinator activity, extended pollinator windows, the beneficial insects, improved crop yields. Those are just some of the benefits for incorporating pollinator habitats on working farms. This is a slide just kind of that I borrowed from my old native seed experience. It's just highlighting some of the benefits of native plants, that they're obviously adapted to some of these harsher climates. They're obviously a little more expensive, but I think once they're established, they have longer legs, and they offer a plethora of benefits that complement, some of the traditional stuff that goes in fields. This slide right here is a mix at my previous regime. It's just a native pollinator mix that we sold. This picture here is actually in an onion seed production field. One of the big growers wanted to incorporate beneficial habitat. They planted about 10 acres throughout their onion seed production fields, and they were really excited, not only for the visual, but they saw kind of an increase in some of the pollinator stuff, and they actually saw a bump in their production where these plots were planted. So pretty cool. This slide just kind of highlights the diversity of some of the collaborations and partners that work on some of these types of projects. We work directly with some of these, especially, they buy a lot of seed, so important partners. I just wanted to highlight the RCDs. They do a lot of great work. I'm sure most people in this room are familiar with what they do, but we've spent a lot of time kind of educating our grower network to highlight that they're a resource, right, to help connect some of these funds and the complicated, processes. But just want to give a shout out to the RCDs. And that's the end of my talk. This is just a slide highlighting some of Lockwood Seed and Grain's what we do. Brian's going to speak a little more about the traditional cover crop stuff and maybe give a little more history of Lockwood. But I'll be around later to answer questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Doug. And they always let the guy that likes to visit the longest talk right before lunch. So if we get to that point, give me the hook and we'll get out of here and on to the next. But coming from Lockwood Seed, one of the things I like to take home and show everybody is that, hey, we want to have the best yields possible. You know, when you go to the coffee shop, every guy there that farms rice has about 102 acres dry, or 102 sacks dry. Everybody got 7,000 pounds on their Chandlers and, probably 7,500 on their Howards for their yields. Not quite. But how do we get there? What do we do? The whole deal why we're doing all this is still to make income. How do we get there? What are we going to do? Well, for my story to take home to you guys today, if you were to take one thing out of this, timing is everything. How do we get there? What do we do? Everybody talks about soil, talks about water, has the magic beans to sell you, but how do we really get there? Not to reinvent the wheel, but I'm showing you a handout that came from the UC Extension. If you can see down here on the very bottom, it was labeled June 1951. You think, who would keep that? Well, my family. We don't throw anything away. You might need it someday if you got a scrap iron pile out there. But these are lessons that we are recycling from year to year, but we have to take that message home. The equipment's different. It's bigger. It's faster. The dollars are bigger. But what are we really doing? We're making crops, and we're doing it with soil, water, sunlight. That's what we're really trying to do. So I've got a whole list of things. When young kids come out of school, they go home and they tell Dad and Grandpa, hey, we need to do cover crops. We need to work on this. It makes things better. Well, Dad and Grandpa have all kinds of reasons why they don't. They're expensive. The frost could kill my almonds. The water requirements are too much. If you live south of Sacramento to try and get a cover crop started in August or September, it's tough. It's expensive. We only have drip irrigation. We only have micros. What are we going to do? Crop competition. Hey, if we get it out there, how do we stop it? What are we going to do next? And those are all some questions I like to answer here, not just talking about it, but try and show you some pictures. And my favorite thing we like to talk about with all of these pictures, some things look good, but I like things that look bad. And my cousin made me take out the picture of the D10 stuck all the way to the cab between his narrow row olives. And for those of you here that know my cousin, please don't tell him I said that. With everything taking place, we want to try and build health, but maintain it. But in order to get where we've got to be, you've got to get it to the crop you're trying to grow. This is a picture just west of Willows and some fairly young walnuts, but the water was about 6 inches deep for about 3 months. You're not going to do real well in that situation. So we try and pass it on. With the new plantings he did, we actually put some lawn seed between the rows. We all kind of laughed for a little bit. A lot of the neighbors gave him a hard time. It took almost a year for some of that fescue to fill in. But come springtime, when he's actually trying to do blight sprays, he can get out there with a ground rig almost a week faster than a lot of his neighbors. For him, it really helps. It's actually made a lawn seed base. It's given him a sod that both helps water infiltration, helps maintain that soil structure, and it got rid of what I call the wagon tracks. I talked with a couple people today. All of the sprayers, used to be 500 gallons of water. Now they're 1,000. Engine drive sprayers weigh twice as much because we have all the emissions requirements on them. Everything we're doing, sprayers, tractors, they have the same wheelbase, and we're making wagon tracks down those rows. Whether your rows are 22 feet wide, 24, it's all the same wheelbase. I dare you to go home and look today. When you get home, almost every tractor, every tire, every wheel, it's the same footprint. So if we can escape from that, that's one of those things we try and minimize. And I made it go dark. Okay, this is my next favorite, some almonds. And for any of you that know, I come from Artois. That's where clay soil mixes with rock. And that's where it makes a really special soil. We actually will change our disc blades every single year if you're farming. Kind of tough. If you got 36-inch stubble blades, you know what those things are going for now. This is a young batch of almonds that was just starting to bloom about the week after this, but the picture doesn't show justice. The water was still sitting there when the leaves started to come out. When those leaves are coming, they're starting to live off the nitrogen and the P and K that's stored in the plant. But one of the things that people don't realize, you need oxygen to make all that stuff work and to start turning. This is going to be bad news for that guy in a couple of years. He hasn't seen it yet. When we rip, we get stuff in the ground. Year 3, year 4, everything's looking good. You get to year 6, you have a train wreck. Everybody wants to know why. Then one of the other things we have, especially on some of our slope ground, we get some erosion control issues where we get things that have started this rill erosion. Once you get the rill erosion to start, you can't stop it unless you actually chisel through it or do some sort of soil practice to get underneath it and then fill it back in. Very hard to do, especially if you got anything over about 3 or 4% slope. This is a slide that one of my coworkers made, and people don't realize the difference between varieties and how they do things. Some of the lighter roots in the middle are actually Merced ryegrains, some triticales, and some oats, things that do well on well-drained soils. And I don't know how to work the laser here, but the left are bell beans or fava beans, and on the very right are peas. I'm a big fan of having mixes with several things in it. 7, 8, 10 years ago, we'd have 4 or 5 things in a mix. Some new research has shown we want to have at least 10, 12, 13 things in a mix. I don't think the importance of what you have in is as important as getting it established. If you can get it boot high and get it growing, you will be so much better off than what anything else would do. We actually have quite a few people do legumes so they can actually get nodules producing nitrogen for themselves. Some of our fertility programs can use cover crops to put up to 40 pounds of nitrogen an acre back into your crop. I don't know what nitrogen is doing this week, but I think it's somewhere on 75, 80 cents a unit. It's pretty important if we can get some of this stuff to go and cycle. And then later on, we'll even talk about half of the nitrogen that comes from the crop is from the roots and the legume products, but half is actually cycled through above ground plant material as it breaks down and decomposes and comes back to the plant. This is a graph that one of my coworkers put together from 2001 taking soil samples. On the very bottom, there's several kinds of vetch, peas, clover. The blue line on the bottom is the available nitrogen from the root zone, taking soil samples after we mowed it and harvested it. We came back and did another sample later on. I think it was 4 months later, and that's the amount of nitrogen that was left in the red. So it's not an overnight thing, and that's what I love about some of these cover crops. Not only can they help your soil be improved, but over time they can gradually feed your current crop or whatever your main focus is as time goes through. The soil organic matter is something that we all talk about, trying to make it better. You saw the earlier show where you poured water onto soil that's been farmed. It's amazing. If we can get an extra % of organic matter in your soil test, it will hold an extra 12 inches of water capacity, meaning when it rains, it doesn't run off. Or my personal favorite now, everybody's got micro sprinklers. Some of my orchards, when you have micro sprinklers and turn the water on, 6, maybe 5 hours later, it's running out the bottom of the row. And that's just a killer. It ruins your efficiency. It doesn't go down. It doesn't get to where it needs to be for the overall plant health. But more importantly, we need every inch of water we can save to go to the crop. We do not have any extra to let go. Maybe. This is a blend of something else we fight, especially on certain soils in California. This is a mix of drought annual clovers, we call it, but you can see where the ground has started to waffle and crack and make pancakes in the bottom right corner. This is one of our killers with almonds. When a nonpareil goes down in that crack, it's not coming back. There is no vacuum. It doesn't come back from there. And we also can use this to try and minimize dust effects. So we're having more and more issues with dust as time goes on, especially as guys are trying to move on from almonds and walnuts, especially as we get closer to towns. It's kind of a tough picture to see in the light here, but this is actually a picture of a cover crop grown into about 16-year-old almonds, absolutely mature. Drove right underneath. It's a mix of oats, bell beans, peas, and vetch. Everybody says that you can't do it. Well, you can. This is actually solid set sprinklers, got it going. Went through and mowed it probably, about 2 weeks after bloom, mowed it about 6 inches tall, and absolutely did fine. On some of their first bloom sprays going through, they just drove right through it. It gets a little bit tall, but it doesn't plug the radiator, doesn't plug the fan if you've got to do any fan spraying. It makes it easy to do. One of the things that we do on some of the walnuts especially, we put in some brassicas and mustards. I love the brassicas and the fact that they open up the soil. They have a fairly large root where they can really help penetrate. They can really get things to cycle, especially P and K nutrients. This is actually a field in my walnuts, so we actually let them go until the catkins come out because it gives our bee guys a place to park bees when they're coming out of the almonds, but they're not ready for other crops yet. It's a really nice partnership with some of our farmers and our local bee guys, and if we do have to go to work or go mow, we'll actually mow every other row to try and drag out that process to leave the flowers available for a longer time. This is another picture. Some of our guys are always worried about cost. What are you going to do with cost? It's still one of our number one drivers. A straight cereal grain planted at about 40 pounds an acre between the baby rows. Hugely helpful if they have any flood water, especially this year we've had flood water flash over some of our orchards 3, 4, 5 times with the Sacramento River coming up. This was a picture taken down by Butte City, and it's absolutely been very helpful in keeping that soil stable and not having anything float in, if you will, big logs, sediment, other issues with the brackish water. This is actually another grower by Ord Bend area where they actually have their own honeybees, and they had baby orchards, so they wanted to have a place to go to work, but they wanted to leave the blooms as long as possible. Just a regular John Deere grain drill planted right through the middle of a baby orchard planting, and it was absolutely good pollinator food source for them till almost June, the way that went. A couple years ago, I used to be really excited about planting almond cover crops early in the season. If you could have them growing before October 1st, all of the mustards would usually bloom before almond pollination time. I found lately that if we get them planted closer to Thanksgiving, they'll actually be a little bit shorter in height, not be the early bloom for the bees, but they'll actually have a much larger flowering window and be much lower in height, so you don't have the frost risk as some of our others do. So we'll even have some of the guys plant every other row, or possibly do some rows first or some blocks first, then come back, depending on the mix of almonds, if you have Nons, Monterey's, Carmels, depending on what you're doing. This is another picture of brassicas. I talk about brassicas a lot. They've been very highly talked about between news, print articles. They have a lot of glycerides that'll help reduce nematode populations, help control some soil diseases. But we're actually using it as a rotational crop. To grow sunflowers, you have to have 2 crops between your other crops. So we've had guys finish sunflowers, grow a corn crop, grow a mustard crop over the winter. We'll come through and spray it, burn it down with some sort of killer. One pass with a Littleston, we're able to plant sunflowers directly into the beds. Absolutely amazing how well it'll clean up. A lot of these cover crops can really clean up well if your timing is on. And so we can help you with that. We can talk about different ways to get it going. But if you need a multiple year, multiple species rotation, tomatoes, sunflowers, vine seeds can be an option too, whether it be brassicas or other things, give you some other rotational windows. We always talk about getting it established. If you're going to spend this much time and you're going to spend this much effort, what do I do? How do we do it? So we plant some demonstration blocks, not only to do it, but to also show you different things side by side. You always know that one field, oh, hey, that one looks good. You're driving down the road, hey, that one looks bad. But when you can see them side by side and see the results, it really makes a difference. This is my helper, Kelly, that works with me at Lockwood Willows, and as you can see by the frown on his face, I make him drive all over the place, and it's usually right before it rains or right before we're going. All we have is a small Great Plains planter, and the cone on top demonstrates a drop. Every time we push the trigger, it makes a new variety drop every 20 feet. But what we're really going for is, hey, 10 times diameter. If you can get most of your seeds planted an inch deep, hopefully before a rain, but not after it's muddy, if we can get those seeds into the ground and get them covered, those are some of the key things to get them established. I've seen so many guys will go into an orchard and they'll leave the seed on top of the ground, or they'll go into ground that's been worked or disked and it's too fluffy and they'll plant it 4 inches deep. If you go through all the effort and you do all that work and then it's not successful, there's so many people look behind you and don't want to see that. We just got to get them established correctly. If it's small seeds, it can be much shallower. Larger seeds can go deeper. Here's a blend of some split work we did where we split planters and tried to put things side by side. I don't care what anybody's favorite recipe is. Hey, some guys like Ford, some like Chevy, some like Dodge, some like Toyota. But we like to put them side by side to see the difference. And one of the earliest things I can tell everybody on the walnuts, if you're planting between walnuts, if you can get the cover crop an inch tall before the leaves fall off, you'll be much happier. The walnut leaves have an acidic content, and they have some other properties where they're very heavy when they get wet. Anything you can do to get them started faster, just as the chandlers are coming off to plant it, you'll be happier. Almonds can take it a lot better. You can plant almonds way later, last week of Thanksgiving, November time, if you want it to be a little bit shorter stature, earlier if you want to. The biggest thing is if you can get them going before a big rain, a lot of people don't realize how cold the soils can get. When we get into November, we get shorter days, colder soil temps. A lot of these seeds don't like to come out of the ground as well. This is a grower that had some tomatoes planted, and then he planted corn behind it, and he put a little bit of a bell bean pea vetch mix on the side. And is your speaker on? I don't want to be too loud if it blows everybody out here. As we go along, he's actually planting corn seed into furrows that are on the left side of the planter, completely open. On the right side, it was probably knee-high bell beans, peas, and vetch. Everybody told me this couldn't be done. And I didn't believe it could be, but this grower in Butte City showed me that it could. And he only put one little tool on his planter that it was a trash whipper. In addition to this, we've had some guys plant cover crops on corn furrows, and it can be anything, whether it be tomatoes, corn, vine seeds. On this particular grower west of Willows, he let it get about knee-high and then sprayed it with a burn down. And the biggest thing you have to do is make sure that the ryegrass is dead. If the ryegrass isn't dead, it'll come back and grow out, compete your corn as it's coming out of the ground. The particular grower didn't get quite as good of a corn crop as what a conventional tillage pass would be, but he did it all with 3 passes with a tractor, and he still got 8 tons per acre grain. It's really good, actually. He made more money per acre than most of his cousins and neighbors because he only had 3 passes. When I was young and out of school, a pass was $10 to $15 an acre across a field. With new equipment costs, depreciation, and fuel costs, you're probably looking at what, $25, $28, $30 an acre per pass. Anything we can do to minimize a pass but yet still maintain that soil looseness or loamy ability is absolutely huge. The one thing that we put on the John Deere planter, if anybody's been around the corn planters or the monosims, what's called a trash whipper, the little knife blade looking thing in front of it, having that on there was able to cut through the dry grass, but it cannot cut through ryegrass or anything that's wet and clumpy. So that'd be the one thing if you're doing cover crops, unless you have a hollow stem like the first video that had the bell beans, peas, and vetch, all hollow stems, went right through it. Anything with more grass, more daikon, heavier root structure, you've just got to have that cutter to get that opener, that double disc opener into the ground. A picture of the corn crop when it got done. You can actually see the little bit of residue in the bottom. Some of the ryegrass was a little bit tough. The corn has to get above it or else it can get tackled. But even though we had all that material in front, you'll notice come harvest time, well, this is not quite the last irrigation, it's all dissolved. Where did it go? It didn't just go away. It dissolved, went back into the ground, and that's become your fertilizer for later on in the season. A lot of people don't realize corn uses half of its nitrogen that it needs after tassel time. So we can do all the pre-plant we want. If you do pre-plant fertilizer, a lot of times you don't have enough at the end of the season. But if we can have some way to feed it come late corn season time after tassel, it's a huge help for the overall health of the crop. And here's a picture that I thought almost died a few years ago when I was skinnier and my hair was a little bit darker. We had a lot of milo in the area. Most people aren't doing a lot of milo now. The economics haven't been there. But we're actually seeing quite a few summer crops. I call this a cover crop. It's actually in a rice field. Right now, the price of commodities is on its ear. Who knows what's going to be next? But there are different specialty markets that are available for different things. We can put milo into a rice field. It's not our favorite choice, but it's a choice. We can do other things into those fields as well. I challenge everybody to look and see what could be available. Just because we haven't done it for a while doesn't mean it's not possible. Locally here, we have a couple of pet food companies making chicken scratch, making things. It's actually quite profitable if you can get it in, catch a little bit of moisture, get it planted to moisture, get it up, and basically with probably 2 tractor passes, you can probably have a full crop. 1 irrigation in a rice field, possibly 2 if it's dry. But we can turn some values on these things that are at least positive for a cash flow situation. This is another thing that we play with a little bit, daikon radish. I'm a huge fan of daikon. It kind of starts slow. It looks like a mustard plant, but has a white flower. I don't think people realize how well this can open up soils. Almost anybody I know planting pumpkins or doing any sort of rotation with pumpkin type products, squashes and gourds, hugely helpful to get the brassicas and some daikon through to open up that ground for the next season. Especially if we're doing pumpkin patches or corn mazes, we see a lot of guys will grow corn on one side, pumpkins on the other, rotate every other year. Hugely helpful for us to get things opened up. But I use this almost as a tattletale. If you plant some daikon radish in your orchard, if you really have a problem, you'll see where that daikon root goes straight down and hooks at a 90-degree turn because it can't go. If daikon can't go, your almonds and walnuts aren't going to go. You're going to be disappointed. You kind of look at that and go, huh, really? Well, I call it my fat boy shovel test. I'm 6 foot, 300 pounds. If I can't go out and gently step on a shovel and get it halfway in the blade in the soil, the feeder roots aren't going to grow. We can put all of the fertility out we want to. If the feeder roots can't get it, you're just throwing the $100 bills away. This is another crop, and it's got our name Forerunner on it. It's a triticale that we use, but we have a lot of people now that are afraid of things getting too big, too hard to control. It's a wintry product. It has about 2 inches of vertical growth this time of the year, even though it's got 10 inches of root growth underneath it. Hugely favorable. I love these kind of products. Not all of the things in the world are equal. We have lots of triticales. We use them in different areas. The ones we use in the north are different than the ones down south. I encourage everybody to look at different things. Don't just look at one item when you're looking at any cover crops or trying to get one built. We do a lot of trials every year with different things, and you can see in this slide, they're not labeled, but you can see how many different strains we're using and looking at things. we're not just picking these things because we want to. As things are flowering and blooming, we always have those varieties that we like or we think are the best. And then when it's time to sell them to you, I always feel pressure that, oh, well, I can get this 3 cents cheaper or 5 cents cheaper. I caution everybody, as you're looking, this is the time of the year that our cover crops are finishing. Look at what's finishing. Look what's finishing well. Try and find those things that are successful here. Hey, the things we're using in Fresno are not the things I'm using in Willows or Chico. We try and get everybody to look at it a little bit and try and look at it from the backside. You know, we're planting in September, October, November, but it finishes April, May, June, depending on your goals. Back to the bees. I drive a lot. I probably drive 40,000 miles a year, maybe more. As a goal this year, my other salesman and I have driven as far as we can to see how many times we've run into honeybees. In my other pickups, always have a radiator screen on my pickup so I don't plug the radiator driving around bees, bugs, mosquitoes. This year driving, I have not had to wash my windshield from honeybees. Terrible thing. If I'm not hitting them on the road, how are they pollinating the almonds? The real secret is I don't think they are. So anything that we can do to help our bee partners have cover crops, have flowers, whether it be hills, whether it be bee yards on the edges, we're trying to make flowers. We're trying to give them a place to go, trying to have some diversity. Bees are like little kids. My kids are 9. If you give them Kool-Aid, they want Pepsi. If you give them Pepsi, they want an ice cream cone. If you give them an ice cream cone, they need a chocolate chip cookie. Well, bees are the same. If you can have some diversity, if you can have some forage for them, give them some options, it's amazing what they'll get to. One of my favorites, Phacelia. It's easy, it's cheap to grow, it's survivable, but more importantly, if you're tired of it, it's easy to kill. Very easy to do. It doesn't get away. Love that kind of stuff. Love blends of it. But I want everybody, if you're thinking about cover crops, don't just think about it for the walnuts or the almonds. Hey, what else are we going to do? What are we going to do if there is no bee rotation next year? That same picture I showed you a couple of slides ago when I was telling you, hey, let's look at how things finish, not how they start. That's the same picture, same spot, same stance. We talk about perennial grasses. I showed some of those pictures before. We don't do a lot of citrus here in the room. I'm seeing mostly almonds, walnuts. But when we have prunes, if we have other soils that are requiring year-round maintenance, love some perennial grasses. The drought annual clover picture I showed you before, this is still one of my favorite pictures, the before and after. Very rarely does it get above your boots tall, but with the crimson clover and the rose clover, my good friends in the wine business tell me it's easier to sell a $20 bottle of wine when the grass is pretty than when it's not. So you need a little bit of personal perception as well. You have to have that feel good, but you have to have the reasons. If we can make everything look like the picture on the left, the picture on the right, it does all those beneficial things we want, but it also looks good, feels good. Huge help in the business of retail. We saw more of the perennial clovers when we did a lot of flood irrigation years and years ago, especially prunes, especially almonds. That's mostly gone away as we're doing double line drip, micro sprinklers, even R10s now. Things have gotten a little bit more popular. We don't see a lot of the clovers. I do like the clovers with the exception of gopher control. There's just no easy way to get ahead of some of those things. I don't think it's something that's outdated though, and I think we're going to see it cycle. I think a lot of the ground that we're planting trees on is not premium. What I would call the Durham soils, Chico soils, Lana Seco Ranch. Those are about the best soils in the world, but now they're moving to places like willows, artois, long clay runs, heavy clay bricks where you can take a hunk of ground, make a brick out of it, and it'll make adobe house for 100 years. Those things really get helped by some perennial clovers. 6 to 8 inch root zone really helps soften that ground up. Again, back to the feeder roots, makes things a little bit easier to uptake nutrients. Annual erosion mix. I'm seeing more and more annuals go, Blando, Zorro, grasses. I'm seeing a lot of people use more of these as an effort to farm, and in particular, if you're a guy that has orchard work and or custom operations, you can get into more of an annual versus perennial. The biggest thing is how much water do you need in the summer? Some of the perennials need some summertime moisture to go and to finish. Some don't. It's been a huge consideration for some of our grape guys to devigor, but I see more and more annuals than I do perennials. Again, back to the bees. We've been working with some of the super bee blends. We call it a super bee program. Some of our guys can have matching funds. We've actually had some matching funds. Apiaries will actually pay growers to have a place to park their hives. It's been a really good program for some of our farmers. The walnut blend was something I showed you about in my walnuts earlier with some of the pictures. Going through and putting this in, I'm mowing it at about 6 inches tall. letting it irrigate for probably 4 or 5 irrigations, letting that grass really dissolve, and then coming through and mowing it right on the deck, probably about the last week in June, first week in July. It's been hugely helpful for me. That clover mix, this is a different picture in different spots where we had the vines before. We've got some walnuts. I absolutely love this to go through in your younger orchards, especially orchards that are 6, 7, 8 years old, starting to get to their first crops. Everybody always asks, how does it harvest? This is an almond orchard that had the drought annual clover mixture in it. You can see it mowed down, absolutely clean. Even with the almond chain being smaller, we're having no issues picking stuff up. As long as you don't make clumps. We just don't want to get big clumps of grass. That's where we get in trouble. Like your lawnmower, it'll plug up. Same thing, as long as we can keep it uniform, we're good. This is actually my walnut orchard where that walnut blend photo came from. We have a hedge trimmer, and I'm kind of roly-poly, but I get out there and cut a 4x4 foot square and we weigh it. We were actually making 33 tons per acre of green silage out of that cover crop that was probably shoulder height on myself. Absolutely huge. It'd be like making your own compost, but it all dissolved by about the second week of July. As you can see here, there's absolutely no residue. It went right through the walnut chain with no big deal. What's the feed value of that? I'm figuring it was worth at least 40 to 50 units of nitrogen. I'm still pumping on 400 pounds of potash every spring, which is probably pretty aggressive. It was expensive the last 2 years of walnut prices, but we're getting over 7,000 pounds of Howards. Last year I was disappointed my Chandler yield was down to 6,000 pounds. It's been higher than that. I think that if we cycle these things, it makes it more available for the plant to pick them up, and I truly believe it, not with what I'm telling you, but I'm doing it myself. And we'd love to visit about this kind of stuff. Doug and I would love to visit afterwards all day long if anybody wants to. We're always testing new things. We have these little test plots. We've got one in Willows, one in Turlock, one in Tulare, and we're going to put one on the Oregon border and one in Oregon this year with some spring grains. We're always looking for those different crops. You can see here's a picture that's a couple years old of different triticales, different oats, different mixes of things. We're always looking for that thing that could be better, that could be the best. I always joke about it. I always want to sell you the best magic beans that are possible. I think that's the case because a lot of the new stuff that we're doing, we never used to get 8-ton grain hay. We're getting 8-ton grain hay now. It's unbelievable for some of our guys. We never used to get 14, 16% starch barley. It's a rocket fuel for our guys that are making hay crops, that are making silage for their dairies. We never used to be able to cycle that much plant material into these cover crops. You know, we used to be really happy with some oats or barley that would get 6 inches tall, maybe knee high. We used to be really happy with some peas that would maybe get, to your belt buckle. Wow, look at that crop. We want to do better than that, and I think we will, but the trick is of all of these slides I've showed you, get them established. If we can get them boot high before the leaves fall, or an inch tall, if we can get them boot tall before you get into like the real wintry, wet months, it'll make all of this look better. And that's what we want to do. We want to get this stuff up, make it look like you're getting a big crop out of what you put the effort into. One of the last few pictures, these things were planted on the same day. One of them's headed out and almost grainy, and the other one is in the boot stage, still growing tall. Depending on your goals, if you want things to finish earlier and move on to a double crop, if you want things to be later and stay as green as long as possible, we can help you with those things. There's different mixes for different times depending on what your goal is. Are you citrus? Are you avocados? Walnuts, almonds, prunes? Just depends on what your overall projects are wanting to finish with. These are some pictures of different wheats. All the wheats look the same. They look the same height. You can't see yield difference in weights, but we use more of the one in the middle than the others all put together. Absolutely amazing for us. So we try and steer to certain things. I'm not just trying to sell you what we've got, but this is why we're doing, this is what we're looking at. Some different mixes of barleys, triticales, things all put together. Not to make it an advertisement for me, it's just, these are the pictures that we're showing here. This is what we're doing in Glenn County. Some of our cover crops, we talk about making them go away, mowing them, disking them to go in. A couple of years ago, the grain hay price was $250 a ton. We actually had some guys that could silage chop and take off enough money from their winter crop to almost pay for all their cultivation costs for their next crop that was coming in. Is that the way to go? Maybe, maybe not. It solved some real cash flow situations, but it did take away all the cover crop on top. But to come back to our take-home message, half of the fertility that was there from the cover crop was still in the soil. Half of the weight was still there. If we can get a big cover crop and have good tonnage, I'm a huge fan of these annuals to cycle both nutrients and revenue. I don't want to sound bad, but revenue's awfully nice when you're trying to buy other nutrients too. So I want to get everybody at least looking at these things. If it doesn't make good feed to feed something else, and it doesn't make good tonnage to do these kind of things, how is it building enough soil for your perennial crop that you're trying to feed? Some more pictures of some of the work we've done in other areas, Intermountain Range, some of the Nevada range, especially we get some of the saltier ground, some of the alkali patches, some different wheats and oats put next to each other. And with that, we just want to say thank you very much. We covered a ton of country. We'd love to visit more later on when everybody's having lunch. We'll be here. Guys, thank you for your time.